Okay, so this is, I'm going to go over what we did today in class with Illustrator. So when you open up Illustrator, you'll get a screen that looks something like this. You might have you might have gone one step further and given you selections, but if it doesn't, you can choose Create New, and you probably get something like this. Excuse me. So this is where you can choose preset sizes. So if you go into Print, you'll see view all your presets. There's A4, legal, which is the American version of A4, A3, B4, which is a smaller, slightly smaller size again. I rarely ever use the B formats, but you can have a look them up if you want to. There's templates that are here already exist as well. For instance, if you wanted to do a simple business card, there it is there. And we might use something like that to get us started when it comes time to do our business card. But there's more templates on Adobe stock down here, so we can come to that later. So at the moment I'm going to set it up for, let's say, excuse me, centimeters or inches, whatever you prefer. You can tell it how many artboards to use, so it'll start off with one and you can take it from there. It's set for a pretty random size, so I'm going to choose A4, and I'm going to tell A4 to be in, let's say, inches. So 8.2677 by 11.6929 inches is the exact dimensions of an A4 page. I'm going to have it tall rather than wide. I'll go with 2 to show you the difference. Excuse me, this is bleed, which we'll come to later on. It's like over printing on the, so say if you had an A4 page that you wanted to print entirely blue, for argument's sake, you would probably go with 1/4 of an inch extra bleed around the top, bottom, left and right. So that would mean it would print slightly beyond the edges of the page. And the reason why it does that is if when you're getting something printed, it has to be cut. So you have a little bit extra in case the cutting is slightly off, you know. You can add it in later if need be. Color mode, I'm going to go RGB because the work I'm doing at the moment is all on screen. RGB stands for red, green and blue. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow and black. And that's cyan, magenta, yellow and black is the color separation used in printing. And this is the RGB is the color separation used on screen. And what I mean by color separation is that all of the colors are achieved by various mixes of red, green and blue. And in print, cyan, magenta, yellow and black. Now, let's say you start off on the wrong one, you can change it to later on to switch between them. Raster effects is looking at resolution of 300 ppi. I think before I'd said in terms of Illustrator, it doesn't really deal with resolution in that sense, but you sometimes need to put in images, and images are bitmap or raster is another word for that. So it's kind of telling you what kind of what kind of resolution you want. Preview mode will come to later on. Don't need to know about that now. So I'm just going to create my A4 page. And any minute now it should create. There you go. So you see, there's what I mean about when I said I was going to do bleed. You see these red lines that are outside the page? They're the bleed marks. So if I was going to make my page entirely, change it to a fill color, and I'm going to go no outline. I'll come to these later on. Let's bring that over there. So let's say I wanted to have an entirely blue page to begin with. I would print that much, and I go outside the boundaries of that's the page in the middle there, and this is the 1/4 of an inch bleed all the way around. So just when it's being cut out as an A4 page, it gives me extra just in case the cutting is off. It's rarely off these days. It's very high-end process, very precise. Excuse me. So we don't have to worry about that. So I'm just going to delete that. So what I'm going to do over today is about making shapes and how to combine them and separate them and stuff like that. So the first thing I'd say is just to get used to your fill and your outline options. At the moment I've got it set to a blue fill and no outline or stroke. If the blue is to the front like this, see the way the stroke is behind it, that means the blue is active and the colors will change in relation to that. This brings the stroke to the front and that's active now. So if I choose that and go to my color, you can see there's black and white already set up. So this will have a black outline and a blue fill. And you can see if I draw something, I'm going to hold shift key down to draw a square. You can see it's got a black outline, and whatever object you have selected, you can see over here, these are all the properties for that object. This is its width and its height. This is where it is, X and Y. So you see that point in the middle. This is where it is on the page in terms of the X and Y axis. If I rotate it a bit, you see the rotation. It tells me what angle it's at. So just undo that. It's a blue fill. It's got a black outline, and the outline is 1 point. You can make it bigger, or I can come down here and tell it to have none. So now no outline. So I'm going to scale this down a bit, just so it's easier for you to see. So there's my blue square, and I'm going to choose an ellipse now. So I'm going to start up a bit high so you can see this, right? So I'm not clicking anything on the mouse, but it's detecting the edge of the blue square, the left-hand edge, and it's telling me that if I start drawing here, I am lined up exactly on that left-hand edge. So I'm going to hold the shift key down so it stays a circle. So there it's, if I let it go there, that circle will be exactly half the width of that square. If I keep going, that's, not sure what that measurement is looking at there, but there's the other side, right? So that circle and that square are the same width. And if I want to check that, the width is 2.8194. The width is 2.8194. They're exactly the same. And that's because the smart guides have lined it up for me, you know? So there. So I'm going to make a copy of this. I can select it and then hold the Alt key down and drag. And I let go of it. So I have to keep the Alt key held down. So I want to drag another one. So hold the Alt key down, drag, let go of the mouse, let go of the Alt key. So now I've got 2 circles and a square. Now, when I drag that down, you see that line that appears there? Right, so I'm not letting go of the mouse, right? That means that that circle and that square are lined up on the same center line going horizontally. And you see the way there's a vertical, up, straight up pink line. That tells me that the edge of the circle and the edge of the square are exactly touching. There's no real overlap, they're just connecting. So I move that in, a bit of adjusting. I can see that's lined up in the middle and it's lined up at the side. Grab the middle there, straight down, lined up at the middle, lined up at the side. So there it is. And I've selected them all. Now with selecting things, you can just draw a big box around them. You see here, this is a point where all 3 objects overlap with each other. I could just select it there. As long as I get a bit of each one, they're all selected. So I move my cursor. If I move it to there and start shift and drag, I'm scaling it in proportion. If I move the cursor outside, it turns to a curved arrow. Hold the shift key down, click and drag. And that will move it in 45-degree chunks. So that's 90, 135, 180, 180 is there, 225, 270. You'll eventually get it back to 360. Anyway, let's get it into position there where we want it to go, which is one more. There it is. So that's my heart drawn, and I can see they're slightly off. So let's get this one. Just going to undo that. This one is slightly off. So just grab the center and move it over. You can see there. Maybe when I was letting it go the first time, I nudged the mouse a little bit. It didn't quite go. But now when I select it, I can see the center. See that there? The center of that circle is on the line of the square. The center of that one is on the line of the square. So I know that they're lined up. So now I want to combine them. Let's move my color guide out of the way. When you have objects selected, you look over here, for instance, right? Nothing is, it's really just telling me about the document at the moment. I'm on artboard 1, the units are inches. I've got it set to snap, I'll come back to that later. I'm scaling strokes and effects. That's a good one to have because let's say if I give this an outline, and I'm going to make it quite a thick outline. That means that if I scale this, you see the lines scale down with it. If I didn't have this selected, right? I select these 3, and now when I scale it, the lines aren't getting any thinner. So it actually looks like they're getting thicker because the shape is getting smaller. So you see there, the lines are that thick there. I scale them down, and they still stay the same thickness. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to make sure I always do this. I always make sure scale strokes and effects is on. And then I'm going to select this. And I'm going to say outline, which our stroke, which is over here. I'm going to set that to none. So whenever you have objects selected, you can see over here it's changed. So now it's talking about the fill. So I could, nope, sorry, wrong one, excuse me. I bring the fill to the front to make it active over here. And now when I change the color, it'll be, the fill will change. So I can align things in terms of lining them up towards the center, align them to the top, vertically, horizontally. But the pathfinder is what I'm interested in here. This one will join them all together. This one will subtract, say if I had two shapes, it would subtract the second one from the first one. This one is the bit where the shapes overlap, and this one is the bits, keeps the bits that don't overlap, right? So I just want to combine them all together. So I can click that, and now they're all one shape. I'm going to undo that, and just show you the same thing using the shape builder. Shape builder is here, and you see when I move over, I'm not pressing anything, I'm just moving over, so it's identifying all of the different shapes that make this up. And if I just hold the mouse down and draw all the way through, combines them. Undo that. Now that's in plus mode, so I'm adding things together in plus mode. If I go to minus mode by holding down the Alt key, see as I press it there, it's switching between plus and minus. So minus would be this. So plus brings them all together. Minus allows you to take certain things away. So the other thing we did today was we talked about the selection tool. And there's two selection tools up here, selection tool and direct selection tool. Think of your selection tool as just a grabber. So it grabs an object, click on it, selects the whole thing. You can scale it, you can rotate it, you can skew it and do a few other things with it which we'll come to later. But for today we'll just go with scaling, rotating and moving. It's often called the move tool, but it's the wrong name for it. It's kind of because it represents a similar thing in Photoshop called the move tool. This is your direct selection tool, and you can see that this image is made up of a few points, and it's kind of the points where things overlapped in the original shapes. So you can see here there are handles. If I grab one, you can bend it, stretch them. I'm going to undo that. You could grab this one and hold shift and grab this one, and then those two would move together. You could grab this one in the middle and bend one and then bend the other to it, produce something more stylized. But the other thing you can do is there are very definite points, right? So you see this one here has got this circle on it, and this one has got that white circle on it, and that white circle is for rounding corners into curves. So if I grab that one, drag it up, I get that curved end. If I drag this white one, you can't really drag it down because it's dragging down towards a point, and well, let's see what happens when we drag it down. Nothing really changes, but if I drag it up, you get more of a curve there, you know. So if I draw, I'll use the pen tool to draw something else. I'm going to draw this just weird pentagon, but not an even one. I'm going to use my direct selection tool and select it. And you can see it's got 5 of those. So now it looks a bit more on purpose. So let's try and do something with this. I'm going to use this. So I've got a new shape in there. I'm going to fill that in with white. Now it's starting to look, it could look like a small monitor, like a little wedge-shaped monitor with a screen on it. So yeah, so that's the other thing we did. One of the other things we did today was to talk about shape builder in terms of what we did with the Beats logo. So I'm going to draw circles here. At the moment I'm going to set them to, you see I've got a default thing here with a white fill and a black outline. I'm going to choose that, but I'm going to make sure that the fill is set to none. So I'm just using outlines at the moment. I'm going to draw a circle, smaller circle, and a slightly bigger circle. And with my selection tool, I just grab all 3 and I center them on each other. Now this middle one I'm going to make it a bit bigger. I'm going to select them all again, center, center. Now I'm going to choose my rectangle tool over here. And you see again, I'm going to click off this, so I don't have anything selected, and use my rectangle tool. If I move this over, I'm lined up with the left hand edge. There I'm lined up with the inner circle, and there with the second circle, and that's the inner one. I'm going to line up here. I'm going to bring my ruler or my rectangle down, and you can see where it locks onto the center and locks onto the edge of the inner circle as well. So you'll feel those points lock onto each other. That's what snapping is. It snaps to the nearest pixel, and you'll feel as it gets close, it kind of locks onto it. Excuse me. Where am I? Back in Illustrator. So I'm going to use my my shape builder, which is here, and you can see here it identifies all of the shapes. So let's select all of these, and you can see with shape builder selected, it's identifying all of the shapes. So I'm going to use in minus mode to delete all of the bits that make up the B. So I'm going to say Alt, so it's in minus mode there, joins that together, well, it subtracts them, joins them together and cuts them away, right? So there it is. It's still kind of made up of two shapes. I can group them together so that if I grab one, it grabs the other one too. I'm going to tell it, its fill is to the front here. I'm going to say red. And I'm going to bring the outline to the front and say no outline. So there's my Beats logo. Still proportionately off, but you can see it is the right technique to do it. Yeah, so that's it. And was there anything else I wanted to go over? Oh, the other thing was the circle thing that we did about duplicating objects. So I'm going to choose my ellipse, and I'm just going to draw a circle. Go to my selection tool because I just want to copy this. I'm going to Alt and drag it to make a copy, and you can see that pink line. The Smart Guide, I'm still holding the Alt key and the mouse. That's dragging it out in a straight line. So now I've moved it. I press Control D or Command D if you're using the Mac, and it just repeats that step. Okay, so I'm going to select them all, and you can see them there, and using Shape Builder in subtract mode, so Alt and minus, I'm going to cut away every second line, and then I'm just going to hold it down and get rid of all of the other ones. And then I'll just scribble through a lot of these, I think. And little bits that I missed. There you go. So there's my shape that I've made by subtracting one from another. And you know, once it's together like that, it is still 4 objects. So I select them all and I group them. So I can select, if I select one, the others are selected. You can always go back in and ungroup it and then just get the individual shapes again, but there's probably no reason to ungroup it. So I'm grouping them together. I'm going to Alt and drag and make a copy. And this copy, I'm going to say Object, Arrange, Send to the back. And I'm going to give this a darker color. But again, whatever object you have selected, the options for are over here. So I'm going to bring its opacity down. And you can see there it is. So let's move that. And then you can use your, if you have it selected, you can use your keyboard cursor keys just to nudge it into position. Yeah. And you can just always get rid of it if you want to. There you go. So that's what we did today. Yeah, I hope that's clear. If there's any questions, just get back to me and I'll go over it again in class. It's no problem.